Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage.
And I'm Dennis, the Bodymeister.
Something is off here. You seem different.
Different how?
Strange. Stranger. You sure you're the Bodymeister?
Of course I am. How could I not be?
Fine, but you are too likable, too nice, too respectable. That way you have little to no value to me.
To be or not to be the Bodymeister. That is the...
Auf Wiedersehen, Strangermeister.
এই না যারা আর্মাডিলোর মাংস খায় তাদের তৈরি ১,৫০০ বছর আগে
থ্যাংক ইউ বলে দাও
নো এই হাসির চেয়ে ভালো থ্যাংক ইউ আর হয় না
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage.
And I'm Dennis, the Bodymeister.
And today, May 2nd, 2021, would have been Satyajit Ray's 100th birthday. To honor this legendary filmmaker, we have decided to review several of his works throughout the year. We already reviewed many of his films before, so we will include a link to all the other videos in the description below.
The obvious choice to review is of course his first feature, Patra Panchali from 1955. His Apu trilogy is easily what he is most remembered for, at least internationally. But Ray is a much more diverse artist than people might think, and therefore we think it's important to not just stop there, but to look at his entire incredible filmography.
And of course we already reviewed the Apu trilogy. So instead of going with his first film, we chose his last one for today's celebration. Agantuk the Stranger was released in 1991, 1 year before Ray died at the age of 70.
Agantuk is not just a good choice because it's his last film, but also because of the titular character, played by the wonderful Utpal Dutt. He's probably the one protagonist in Ray's oeuvre that is closest to his own persona. Both of them share a huge curiosity for the world around them, both have a distinct aversion against materialism, and both are also kind of loners.
Agantuk is based on Ray's own short story Atiti, though there are some differences and most of the film's most wonderful dialogue scenes aren't really featured in the short story.
It tells the story of a wealthy family that is paid an unexpected and rather unwanted visit by a man claiming to be the woman's long-lost uncle Manu Mohan Mitra. The initial suspicion with which they greet the man slowly dissolves, as he tells them stories of his travels and tales.
Well, at first Sudhindra, the husband, is the one who is suspicious. Anila, on the other hand, is welcoming and nice. But over time this dynamic slightly changes and Anila is the one who thinks that something is fishy, while Sudhindra gets more relaxed, although not entirely. So he invites the neighbors and later on a befriended lawyer to test Manu Mohan.
It's like a game with different players and the roles alternate, but who wouldn't believe Manu Mohan? He's friendly, nice, attentive, he's a great storyteller. He seems like a man who understands life completely, although he does not, as he later finds out himself.
I could relate a lot to the couple at first. I guess most people are not that fond of the idea to welcome a complete stranger into their house, even if he claims to be family, and to share precious time with him. Everybody is always quite busy, we all have our plans, and we usually don't want to leave our comfort zone too much.
But because of that, people also miss out on a lot of opportunities, like making new experiences, meeting new people, listening to their stories, getting to know their perspectives. You're able to form new relationships and expand your knowledge. Or of course you could just enjoy the company of other people.
This question, if Manu Mohan is indeed a real uncle or just an imposter, of course creates a little mystery. And films are always mysterious. There are always aspects we don't know about, because we always only get a small glimpse of something.
Yes, this dichotomy of knowing and not knowing runs through the entire film. And like Manu Mohan himself says, and I quote, "It has the elements of a drama, suspense, suspicion, conflict, to be or not to be uncle."
For Sudhindra, it appears fairly simple at first. He urges his wife to ask for the stranger's passport, which she won't do because that's simply not something that's socially acceptable in that situation. But when Sudhindra meets Manu Mohan himself later that evening, it is actually Manu Mohan who shows him his passport, yet also declaring that it proves nothing, because it's so easy today to forge a passport.
It's as if he doesn't want Sudhindra and Anila to believe him just because of that document. For him it's much more important that you get to know a person and therefore know who that person is, and then you can decide if you believe that person or not.
Like many other Ray movies, The Stranger consists mostly of people talking. Due to his declining health, Ray was forced to shoot mainly indoors at the end of his career. But when you have a script that's so wonderfully and poignantly written and performances this strong, it doesn't really matter that much. Which is not to say that the filmmaking itself isn't great. It is. It has this beautifully sublime Ray touch.
Absolutely, the cinematography was done by Barun Raha, who worked with Ray on his last 3 films. There are 2 scenes in the movie that particularly stand out. The first one marks also the first time that we spend some time outside. We are in a park where Mano Mohan is telling Satyaki and his friends about the magical wonders of our world. We cut to a long panning shot of a man flying a kite, and then the camera very gently circles around Mano Mohan, immersing us, pulling us right into his storytelling.
The second standout scene is a long 2.5-minute continuous shot that starts and ends with the image of a clock and unfolds the discussion of Anila and Sudhindra after the evening went bad. It's a wonderful scene where the lighting plays a big part as well.
It actually comes across like some kind of mystery thriller in that scene, very dramatic and serious. And all of that just because they don't know what to make of Mano Mohan.
Mano Mohan is just a terrific character, and I have to say that my own perception of him unfolded very similar to the one by Anila and Sudhindra.
Mine too, but they of course represent the rather obvious two sides of the medal, which makes it easy to connect with either one of them. But you can also connect with Mano Mohan, who actually doesn't give that much reason to distrust him. He's maybe too nice, but that's obviously a societal problem if you think like that. And that again is something that Ray definitely wanted to point out.
Definitely, yes. The fear of something new, of something you don't know. It is said in the film that the year Mano Mohan left was 1955, which is probably very deliberately chosen because that was of course also the year in which Rai's Patha Panchali came out and changed his path in life completely.
I love that little connection between these two movies. Mano Mohan experienced so many things, he's so articulate. It's a huge joy to see how he unfolds his knowledge of the world, of different cultures and people. Utpal Dutt is of course magnificent, absolutely masterful in this role, but it's the sophisticated dialogue, the wonderful conversations that glue you to the screen.
At one point the Bengali practice of Ada is addressed. It means a conversation among several members, usually from the same socio-economic strata. Ranjan Rakshi, a friend of the family who's played by the lovely long-time collaborator Rabi Ghosh, brings it up as one of the wonderful aspects of Bengali culture. And as a matter of fact, Satyajit Ray also took part in Ada a lot in the past, especially in the late 1940s and 50s, before he started his career in filmmaking. But Mano Mohan tells about the very sophisticated discussions that were held in ancient Greece, and that most Bengali Adas instead boil down to empty twaddle. He concludes by saying, if Bengali Adas had been at a high level, Tagore might have participated.
I loved all these conversations. Be it the one between Mano Mohan and Sudhindra and Anila, or the one with Ranjan Rakshi, or the most serious one with Prithvi Sengupta, played by Dhritiman Chatterjee. Every single line that's spoken feels natural and real. In some moments I almost wanted to take part in the conversation and contribute something, although I think it would be something stupid.
Most likely, yes. The conversation with Prithvi Sengupta about modern civilization is without a doubt one of the highlights of the movie, and the one where my perception of it changed from liking it to loving it. It's almost like an interrogation of Mano Mohan, and it's great to see how he arguments his points, and he's totally right too. This arrogant belief that our technological advancement automatically makes us so much more civilized than tribal people is just nuts.
And Mano Mohan keeps his cool all through his conversation, whereas Prithvi loses his temper because he's simply not able to break Mano Mohan's arguments.
But Mano Mohan is also not simply condemning modern societies, but he's condemning their arrogance, their hubris.
It's so well written, it's really quite an achievement to keep the viewer interested and intrigued, almost only through the characters and their dialogue, and that by a director who's also famous for incorporating nature and the environment into his stories so well.
Absolutely, and I also love the ending, which is positive and optimistic, and also really touching and thoughtful.
It's well rounded and just makes the movie feel that more complete. It's like if you were on a journey with all these beautiful characters and finally arrived at your destination, although Mano Mohan's journey of course continues.
Very true. So what would we say in German about The Stranger?
Der Fremde ist Satyajit Rays vielleicht persönlichster und intellektuellster Film. Herausragend geschrieben und gespielt, bringt uns diese Geschichte ein Stück näher heran an die unendlich neugierige, mitfühlende und weltoffene Stimme eines einzigartigen Regisseurs. Der Fremde ist der finale Beleg für Satyajit Rays unglaubliche Brillanz.
I give The Stranger 8 out of 10. It's more like 8.3, but I don't do that.
For me, it's 9 out of 10. It's more like 9.3, but I don't do that either.
Hariharai Namo Krishna Jadavai Namo Jadavai Madhavai Keshavai Namo Gopala Govindaram Srimadhushadan Giridhari Gopinath Modana Mohan.
Did you know that Utpal Dutt founded a theater group in 1948 that was presided by Satyajit Ray?
Some interesting trivia for a change. Thank you, buddy. So, what are your thoughts about The Stranger? Leave a comment and hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at the Jimmy Cage.
And you can hit me up on Twitter at TheBuddyMeister.
And you can also become a member of the channel and get exclusive rewards. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all we have to tell.